every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So
Mm.
if I say yes to this after school meeting, then I'm saying no to leaving on time and maybe spending that with my husband. Or if I say yes to emails at all hours, I'm saying no to being present at home. Or you could fill in those blanks with all kinds of things. If you get in the habit, and again, this is a lot easier said than done, and it takes a while until it becomes a habit, but just try and remember that every single time you say yes to something at school, and this is true of anything in your life, then that means that you no longer have the time for something else.
Welcome to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the go-to show dedicated to teachers who want to make a big difference in education. Whether you're in your first few years or well into your teaching career, we are here to inspire, support, and empower you with bite-sized tips, simple strategies, and the motivation to lead an education revolution, one classroom at a time.
We're Ashley and Alicia from Rainbow Sky Creations, two Aussie teachers who love all things teaching and learning. We are here to help you thrive as you work toward making an impact in your students' lives while loving your life as a teacher.
We are here to help you bring joy, simplicity, and creativity into your classroom on the daily, because
there are rainbows ahead, my friend, and together we're unstoppable.
Let's get into today's episode.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we record this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
This episode of Rainbow Skies for Teachers is brought to you by Transform Your Teacher Time, our go-to mini course to help you save hours in your week. Hey teachers, welcome back to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the podcast that teaches you to work smarter and not harder. And that is what today's episode is going to be all about. If you've ever felt overwhelmed, exhausted, or like your to-do list never ends, then this episode is for you. Today, we're diving into the reality of work-life balance in teaching, sharing practical strategies to help you set boundaries, manage your workload, and actually enjoy your time outside of the classroom. Yep. It is possible. We are being joined by a very special guest, Jennifer, and we're going to talk all about creating daily and weekly schedules to stay on top of tasks, learning to say no to unnecessary responsibilities, eliminating those time-wasting tasks, and it may not be popular, but we're going to dive into some examples of that, protecting your personal time and setting healthy boundaries. Because let's be real, your well-being isn't a luxury, it is a necessity. Let's start making changes that will help you thrive, not just survive in this amazing profession. So welcome, Jennifer. So let's start with the elephant in the room. You say, don't let your dedication to teaching cost you your personal life and well-being. Is this possible, Jennifer?
Okay, it is, but to be honest, I struggled to believe that for the bulk of my career. And it really wasn't until the last few years that I really internalized and believed it. I was always that person that was like last one out of the building, first one in, doing all these things that I thought was going to make me a better teacher. And it wasn't until I realized that so many of those things were like preferences, they were extras. I was treating them like must, that I had to get them done, but they just weren't. So I think that it's absolutely possible if you take a really honest look at what you're doing and decide, yes, these things are important. Yes, these things are needed, or no, they're not, and create a system for weeding out the ones that stick to your schedule and the ones that you just let go.
Yes, I think as teachers, we really do put things on our to-do list that, as you say, are preferences, not necessarily must-dos.
Yeah, so even like me, I'm very into aesthetics, both in my house and at work. And my classroom was always one of those that was like Pinterest worthy, super pretty. People loved to come in. It had a really great vibe and it made me feel comfortable. And maybe if I had all of my tasks in order and I felt like my time management was under control, those things are fine. But I just realized that I was drowning and constantly trying to make things pretty or make things new. And it's really not necessary. It's one of those things that is definitely an extra or a preference, but it's not a must.
Yeah, for sure. When I first started teaching, I felt like every time students' work went up on the wall, I had to have
Hmm.
some sort of sign that
Yes.
explained what that work was. And it was always added to my to-do list and I would type it out. Back in those days, you'd cut it out with pretty scissors and put it
Yes.
on a piece of colored paper and then add that to the artwork. But that's not really that important because you and the student whose classroom it is, you know what that work was. You know what that lesson
Right.
was about. That's for another outsider who may happen to walk into your classroom. That doesn't really
Right.
happen very often either.
It's so true. It's so true. But yeah, you feel like it's so important, especially if you're a new teacher, because maybe that's
Mm.
what you are seeing on Pinterest or that's what you are seeing on Instagram, but it's really not. So if you're looking for ways to streamline your workload, those are the first things to pitch and go.
Yes. So we're talking like must do's versus preferences. I really like that.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
you also mentioned that you've experienced the late nights, the Sunday dread, the constant pressure of doing more with less. Can you share,
Yes.
do you have any defining moments or any times that you realized that just something had to change in your approach to teaching and that work life balance as a teacher?
Yeah, so I just feel, and I've talked about this with so many friends and teachers who are in the classroom, and I feel like we all feel the same way. But I was just watching my life pass me by almost. It wasn't one particular moment or one particular event, but I was constantly turning down invitations to go to dinner or constantly not allowing myself to just turn off my teacher brain on a weekend. But I felt like I always had to be doing more. And it just gets to a point where you realize, as much as I hate to say it, but it is a job. And you do have to take care of yourself and you have to get rest and you have to make sure that you have that balance. Otherwise, it just burns you out so that you're not really available or helpful for anybody, much less your job. Yeah, it's just kind of a combination of a lot of little things that just pile up on you, I feel like.
Yeah, I think as a teacher, sometimes we feel guilty to say like it's just a job because we often are
Yes,
very passionate about it, but it is your job and there's
right.
lots of parts to you besides just being a teacher.
That's so true. And I was somebody that if you would have said that, people did say it. In fact, I had people in my family who would say, it's just a job, Jennifer. You need to just turn it off and go do fill in the blank, whatever those things are. And I would always argue with them and say, no, it's not. It's more than that. And it really is. I think people who are taught or drawn to teaching are not the kind of people that are looking to check in and check out, punch a time card and punch out. They really do care and they're very passionate about it. But yeah, I think sometimes if we don't remember that it really is a job, that we can just so easily burn ourselves out.
Definitely. We can be there and present and giving it 100% of ourselves while we're
Right.
there, while we're preparing. And then we can also give ourselves permission to go and do other things outside of that realm of
Right.
teaching.
So true. So true.
Yeah, I've fallen victim to exactly the same thing. So let's talk about the Sunday dread for a second.
Yes.
We know that there's teachers out there that are struggling with that icky feeling that comes usually on a
Mhm.
Sunday afternoon into a Sunday evening. Do you have a go to routine or a mindset shift to help them break free of that cycle?
Yes. So it was two parts. The first part was making sure that anytime I left on a Friday afternoon, that everything was ready to go on Monday morning. So there was absolutely nothing at all for me to do except turn on my lights and my computer. There were no copies to make, no resources to grab last minute, but everything was planned and ready to go. That way, the dread that I felt on Sunday, if it popped up, it wasn't because I had forgotten to do something or I still had so much work on my desk to go through before the kids came. So that was huge. But then also making sure that my Sundays were really intentional and it looked different every week. A lot of times it started off with church and then lunch with friends. And it ended up with anything that felt relaxing or self care ish at the end of the day. So that could be starting a new book. It could be going out with other friends. It could be taking a bath. It doesn't have to be one specific thing, but dedicating all of Sunday for just me and whatever that looks like on those days or every weekend dramatically changed that whole feeling of dread. And every time it would creep in, you get closer and closer to bedtime on Sunday, and it's, oh gosh, there's only a few more hours until I have to get up at the crack of dawn. I just would remind myself, like, one, you need to be present in where you are now. But then two, remind myself, everything's ready to go. Just having that set routine that I didn't have this big pile of work or whatever it was that you normally dread. I think identifying what is causing the dread in the first place
Mm.
is huge. So if it's just going back to your job, that's one thing. Or if it's going back and thinking, I have 5 things to do before the kids come, but just identifying that. And for me, identifying that if I am trying to relax on Sunday, but I know I have 5, 6, 7 things to do Monday morning, I can't relax. So that's what worked for me. And I think you really have to figure out what works for you, or like I said, where that source of dread's coming from for you, because everybody's different.
Yes, I think Just when you said discovering where that source of dread is coming from, that really
Yeah.
resonated with me. I've spoken on the podcast about this before, but I worked at a school that would have sent out an email on a Sunday afternoon with the week of things to do. And often it had things that you had to hand in or events that were coming up, like all of the things of the week and what the expectations were. And for me, that just put a black cloud over my Sunday. And it was
That
expected that we read it on a Sunday night. And actually, I was on the leadership team at the time. And I ended up stopping and reading it on the Monday morning and just thinking, that's the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into my classroom, open my diary, read and put the bits and pieces that I need to do in instead of doing it
yes.
on a Sunday in my time. And we do have control over that because no
Right.
one's forcing you to read an email on Sunday. And while we're talking about emails, I highly recommend taking them off your phone or not having
Yes.
notifications on your phone either, because that is a big
100%.
contributor to that dread or just that constant feeling that work is always there. You're always on because you don't
Yes.
have to be.
That's so very true. And there's little things like that. Like a friend of mine told me about taking the actual email app off of your phone several years ago. And it
Mm.
sounds so simple, but I had never even thought about that. And I swear, once I did that, it was a game changer because you're not seeing those notifications. You're not tempted to just click and log in and see what's going on. But there's so many little things like that that you can do to make it a little bit easier, or at least maybe not easier just to avoid the dread, but also easier to keep up those boundaries or create some margin between yourself and your job.
Yeah. I'm curious now. You are on the other side of things and you help teachers. You're not in the classroom
Yeah,
teaching anymore, are you?
I'm not. No. Mm-mm.
Do you have the Sunday dread now, ever?
You know what? That's a really good question. Yes and no, because there's parts of my job. I love my job. I feel like I have my dream job helping other teachers. I could not ask for a better job. But there's all kinds of things behind the scenes that people don't know about that go along with your job.
Mm-hmm.
So things like, gosh, one of mine is social media. I'm just not a really big social media person. And so sometimes social media is something that's on the table or something I have to do Monday morning and I dread it. But again, just like with teaching, there are things that you love about your job. There's things that you don't love about your job. And if you can set a schedule and move those around, and sometimes you can't, sometimes you just don't have the flexibility or freedom to do that. But if you're able to move the tasks or move the parts of your job to days when you are in a better like headspace or that work better for your mindset, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I can really relate to social media dread. I
Yeah.
enjoy social media, but I do have dread. It's not on a Sunday. It can be just like randomized throughout the week of, oh my God, I've
Right.
got to get something up there to post.
I know it's so true, but that's true for any kind of job. I've never met a single person who loves every aspect of their job. There's something that in all of our jobs that we don't really care for. So just trying to move them to a place where you can better manage them or tackle them makes a big difference.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I feel like this has been a thread throughout our conversation that many teachers feel so guilty about prioritizing themselves over work. But instead of looking at work life balance as a luxury, realizing that it really is a necessity, have you had any mindset shifts or any advice you can give around realizing that it's a necessity to look after ourselves as teachers?
Yes, and I feel like this was something I still struggle with, and I feel like because so many teachers are women, do we not struggle with that as women, whether
Oh,
you're a
yeah.
mother or whatever the case may be? I feel like that's a real not that men don't struggle with that, but I feel like so many of us do, and I am such a perfectionist, and I'm really hard on myself, and I'm also a people pleaser, which is not a good thing, but I'm really hard on myself when things don't go the right way, or I feel like I'm letting somebody down, and that included my students, but several years ago, and this sounds silly or even corny, but several years ago, somebody said to me, it was either in a podcast or I was reading something about self care or prioritizing yourself is a lot like putting on your oxygen mask on a plane. And it somehow just like really resonated with me is that if you're on a plane and it starts to go down and you need oxygen, you have to put yours on first before you can take care of anybody else. And
Mm,
it's so true in life is that if you don't put yours on first, there may not be anything left for you to give. Or if you don't take care of yourself first, you could run yourself down or burn yourself out so that you're really not able to care for others or be as helpful as you could be if you were taking care of yourself first. That's a lot easier said than done, but just keeping that in your mind that the better you take care of yourself, the better you're going to be able to take care of others or be there for others. And that's true for teaching or being a mother or being a sister, a friend, partner, whatever that is. It really is the most important thing to make sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you are healthy and strong able to take care of others.
For sure. As teachers, that is our role. We're in that caretaker
Right.
role. But if you're not the best version of yourself, I know days I've stepped into the classroom and I haven't been the best version of myself. And the
Sure.
people that suffer are your students, but it's also
Mhm.
you at the end of the day, too, because you walk away feeling guilty or you walk away feeling like you haven't done a good job.
Yes, yes, that's so true. And it's just like anything else. The more rested you are, or the more clear you are, whatever it is, the better you're taking care of yourself, that's going to shine through, or whomever you have a relationship with or throughout the day, they're going to be able to see that better side of you or the better part of you, or have a little bit of a better interaction with you, perhaps, than if you're just ragged all the time or just not taking care of yourself. So
Yeah.
it's hard to do, but it's important to remember.
It sure is. So, do you have any suggestions of any small changes teachers could make? Anything that may have helped you that could help that being work life balance?
Yeah, I feel first of all, it's just you have to believe that the things we've talked about are actually true and
Mm.
claim them. It's like anything else, like weight loss. I've struggled with weight my entire life, and I know the things to do. That's all kinds of head knowledge, but I don't always do them. So it's the same with this. We can give you all kinds of tips for creating a work life balance, but if you don't believe that they're true or you don't believe that they are important or something that you really want to work on, then nothing's going to change. It doesn't really matter. So
Mm.
first believing that you are worthy of making yourself a priority, that it is important to create that work life balance and that it's possible. So I think those three things, just believing those to begin with. But then also, one of the biggest, I guess, smallest changes, but biggest impacts I had was protecting my time. So simple things like, instead of stopping into the teacher's lounge during my planning period, I went straight back to my classroom, closed the door, turned off the lights, and I did the tasks that I had scheduled for myself during the day. And I think, again, that worked for me, but it may not work for everyone. Or if you're an introvert like me, that's a great plan. If you're an extrovert and you need that kind of contact with your peers or whomever every day, then that's not something for you. Something else I did is I closed down my email box at school and I only checked it at certain points during the day. I was in a habit of checking it every period and then at lunch and planning and all the things, cutting that back. And then I even cut back the times that I responded to email to even fewer. Unless there was an emergency or there was something that I absolutely had to respond to right away, I would wait until the end of the school day to respond to emails because, as we all know, once you start that, you can really get sucked in and it just takes a lot more time than what you were anticipating or planning.
Yes.
So, little things to just protect your time, setting appointments with yourself. If you think about it, if you were going to go to a doctor's office, and for me, I always make sure I show up on time, I make sure that I'm there, I make sure that I'm present. Consider your time in the same way. It's like you're setting an appointment with yourself. So if it's your planning time, that's your sacred time to do your planning and not have to do all the other things that, are piling up around you or that you feel are piling up around you. But yeah, just protecting your personal time there.
And that's something that you're in control of. And I'm really big on controlling the controllables, things that you
Yes.
are in charge of.
That's so true because there's so much that you're not. But yes, the things that you can control, absolutely. And it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to stick to those schedules that you make for yourself. And you can't always, as a teacher, things pop up that you're not expecting. But if you can get into the habit and control it as much as possible, then it makes a big difference.
Yes, I think just taking that point there, you're saying like be kind to yourself as well. So you can
Yes,
make those
yes,
little changes, protect your time, but be kind and soft on yourself if things don't go to
yes.
plan.
Because if you've been teaching any length of time, you know that it will not always go to plan. So, yeah, having just grace, a little grace for yourself is super important.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I super admire about you, Jennifer, is your organization and the way that you teach teachers to be organized and to help with their organization. And I feel like the idea of work life balance, well being, organization, time management, it all melds in together. They all feed each other.
Yes.
So let's talk about some quick wins for teachers. Anyone that's listening to this that's thinking, I want something that I can take away today. Do you have any organizational quick wins, small but powerful changes that teachers can make today to feel in control of their workload?
I have three, and they vary with how quick they are. I'll go over them quickly and then we'll see which ones you can tackle and which ones you can't. The first one I always say is you have to determine importance. You ask yourself anytime either you're wondering what should I do next or trying to decide what gets done and what doesn't get done, is ask yourself, is this, and this can be fill in the blank, is it absolutely necessary to the success of myself as a teacher or the success of my students? If the
Yes.
answer is no, then that automatically lets you know that it can be tabled, either tabled for good, tabled temporarily, but take it off of your plate because obviously there are all kinds of things that we have to do that really will impact your success as a teacher or your success as a student. So I think the more you get in the habit of doing that, because when you first do it, it feels like everything is necessary and it has to get done, but really it doesn't. And I think the more you do that, you'll just be surprised at the clutter that gets rid of, both like physical and that mental load that we're always carrying. Just doing that quick question, it'll weed out a lot of that. So that's the first one. And that'll take 30 seconds or 30 minutes. So that's real quick. The other one is manage your time. I'm a huge proponent of creating a schedule for yourself, both daily and weekly. And what I do is I write down every single thing that I have to get done in a day and a week, and I schedule it just like I was talking about earlier, but I make appointments for all of those things. And that accomplishes several things. One, you get to see exactly what you need to do in any kind of given day or week, and it helps you weed out the clutter, what needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done. But it'll help you stick to your boundaries of leaving work on time or creating that work life balance when you have a schedule. And that could be a much longer topic, but just creating a schedule for yourself, I don't think every teacher has that. I think we just go in when we think we need to go in and leave when we are quote unquote done. But just setting that schedule and sticking to it, which is the harder of the two, is sticking to it, but it can be done. And then the last one is creating systems. There's very little that we do as teachers that isn't something that is on our plate often. So there are very few one off tasks, but there are things that we have to do all the time. If you're constantly taking each task one by one, you're wasting a lot of time and a lot of mental load getting that done. For instance, you should have a system for lesson planning, just like you probably already have a system for collecting papers when students are done with them. All the different things that you do in a day or a week, if you have a system or a very specific process for how you get those done, you approach it, you accomplish it, look at it afterwards to see if it worked well, then you will end up saving yourself a ton of time and a lot of that mental load or kind of mental capacity while you're getting it done.
Yes. Systems ties in with the idea of routines for me too. I read that book,
Yes.
Atomic Habits. Have you read Atomic
Yes.
Habits?
It's such a good book. Yes.
It is a fabulous book, and it's all about creating these routines and these tiny little things that all add up. And once you're doing something on a regular basis, you're not having to think about it anymore. So you're
Right.
taking away that mental load on your brain. One thing
Right.
that I was terrible at when I first started teaching was we had merit awards every week, and I would forget we'd do them
Oh
on a
my gosh.
Friday morning, and I'd be like always just like scrambling trying to write these merit awards. But then I put in this system to do it on a Thursday afternoon, and I'd write it in my diary to begin with, and then it just
Yes.
became
Mhm.
automatic that every Thursday afternoon I'd write those merits. They'd be sitting on my desk ready to go for Friday morning. So I think
Right.
that if there's these things that you're doing regularly on a weekly basis, setting that appointment time for yourself, writing it in your diary, making it a part of your routine, massive time changer.
So what I think of is copying. It used to be I would
Yes.
copy as I needed it. And that could be in the middle of the day, beginning of the day. You're in the middle of your planning period, you go to the copy room, but there's five other teachers there. So you have to wait. And then you copy your one or two activities and you do the same thing the next day. Think about how much time that takes to walk to the copier, wait in line, copy your stuff, walk back. If instead you plan for an entire week, you gather all the things you need copied at one time, and then you go in. My deal was I went in first thing in the morning, which I am not a morning person, but it really was the best time to get up and do that once a week because nobody else is in the building, or there are very few people in the building. So I would get all of my copying done for the week, and that was it. I didn't have to think about it again. But there's all kinds of things like that that we do as teachers that you have to do on a daily or weekly basis. And if you're doing it one here or one there, it really adds up. It's really taxing, but yeah.
Yeah, it sure is. Okay, so we're talking about time savers. Let's talk about some time wasters. Are there any
Mhm.
time wasters that you see teachers struggling with? How can we eliminate these time wasters?
Yes, these may not be very popular answers, but I have a few. So, my number one on the list is always the door decorations and bulletin board displays. Now, when I was first teaching, I loved doing that. I love creating really pretty bulletin boards and door decorations. And there's nothing wrong with them. So please don't hear me say there is nothing at all wrong with them. But if you're struggling to get all the things done and you're trying to find extra time, tasks like those, they just really aren't necessary. If you go back to that question, does this add to the success of myself as a teacher? Or the success of my students. And it doesn't to have a really pretty door or a bulletin board. So if you're the somebody that's like looking for things to just take off your to-do list, that's definitely one. But you can turn that into something that's just kind of cutesy or pretty and make it something that's useful or purposeful. Instead of having something that's just pretty on your door, it could be an interactive display that students have activities with that they work on every single month, or the same for a bulletin board. You don't have to scrap some of these things. You just have to maybe think about them in a different way so that they work for you or with you instead of against you. But that's definitely number one. My other one is laminating and cutting all the things.
Oh, yeah.
And I used to be the queen of lamination. Every single thing in my classroom was laminated, I swear. So I understand, I totally get it. But when you think about the time involved, again, in taking all your stuff down to the laminator and rolling it through and then having to cut it out, you may or may not use that stuff ever again. And so getting in the habit of just, unless it's something that your students are going to use all year long or like every day for a month, like if it's for a specific unit, otherwise, I would just copy on cardstock and call it a day because it's just such a time suck. And that other thing was the cutting out all the things. I think of my centers my first few years of teaching, and I used to do like little flowers, like task cards, prompts on little flowers if it were spring or a Christmas tree or something like that to make it cute. But there's really nothing wrong with a square or a rectangle that you can just use a paper cutter and straight lines. So things like that again that are adding to it makes it pretty, but it's not really necessary. Those would be my big two.
Oh, I've got so much to say about this.
I know.
Firstly, in Australia, now I could be, if I'm wrong, guys, let me know if you disagree. But in Australia, we don't tend to do the door decorations like you guys
Really?
do in the US. I've always had one door decoration and it usually introduces the class and it stays the same for
Yes.
the entire year.
Yes. That's the way it
But
should be. I totally agree.
I've noticed in the States, and I really only noticed this in the last sort of 10 years since Instagram and things became big, that you guys change according to themes,
Yes. Well, and
which is
it's so funny. Now,
cool, but you're right. That is a
yeah, but
big
it's so much
extra thing,
time.
isn't it? Yeah.
Now, there are some buildings where they actually, in fact, this was true of me. I was in a building one time where you had to have something on your door, something very specific on your door every month, which
Oh,
if that's the case, I really hope that at some point you're one of those teachers that kind of advocates for maybe a change in that policy and
yes.
maybe help your administrator see, okay, maybe I understand the intent behind that, maybe, but there are better ways to use my time. And again, if you have to have that, then make it work for you, but not against you. But no, it's so funny the different traditions in this country, but that is definitely a way that we spend a ton of time that just is not necessary. Yeah.
No, not at all. I find it fascinating. I do actually, the
Yeah.
other flip side of it though, I find it can be really fun because you're always going with
Sure.
a seasonal theme and the kids always,
Yeah.
they're getting involved in love hearts because it's Valentine's Day or like
Right.
all of the fall colors because it's autumn coming your way. But we don't really do that either. And that's the
Yeah.
flip side. It does seem really fun for kids. But yes, you're right. We need to be able to save our time where needed. The other thing
Right.
was about the laminating, which also isn't great for the environment. I accidentally
Yes.
bought the other day, instead of paper, I bought cardstock and it looked like paper. Anyway, I was printing out all of my rainbow sky things and it was fabulous. It was just as durable. And we
Yes.
often say
Yes.
that to our teachers, print it out onto cardstock, but it's great. And then if you've finished with it, you can send it home and the kids can play those games or
Right.
do those activities at home because it's just a matter of printing it again. You're not like
Right.
printing, laminating. I remember back years ago, we would say, oh, do you print cut, laminate, cut? Or do you just print, laminate, and cut? Are you cutting out your
Yes.
letters and then laminating them and then cutting them out again? And I've got to say, I did do that, which now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, all of that time I could have
Yeah.
been reading a good book.
Yes. No, you think about all that adds up. And don't get me wrong, if you have plenty of time on your hands and you're trying to fill it, it's great. And
Yes.
I love the way it looks. Absolutely. But again, if you are somebody who's drowning or you feel like you just can't get on top of all the things that you have to do, things like that are really easy to just take off your list. But
Yeah.
yeah.
The other thing that I find can be a big time waster is that teachers don't always go to the teacher that taught that grade before and ask for their lessons and their programs. I think there's something ingrained in us, like it's cheating or like you're cheating the system or something. But there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with using those plans and then just adjusting them slightly. Like we don't need to always be recreating the wheel.
Oh my gosh, I almost added that as my third
Oh,
point.
there you
I
go.
was terrible about that because I like everything. People would give me worksheets that had a font that I didn't like, and I would recreate it in a different font. And you think about why, what a time waste that is. But no,
Mm,
recreating the wheel, feeling like you're always having to create something new when what you have is perfectly fine. That's a really good one.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. What is your advice to teachers who feel pressured to do these things? They feel pressured to always say yes to those extra responsibilities, to email after hours, to do those after school meetings. What would you say to them?
One, I 100% understand because that was me. And I feel like there was one year, especially, where I was on 5 or 6 different committees because I could not say no. It was terrible. But this is another thing. I was reading a book, had nothing to do at all with teaching. I forget what it was, but she was what we call a recovering people pleaser, which is what I
Hmm.
call myself. I'm a recovering perfectionist, but she made the statement that really resonated or almost hit me in the gut. But it was every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. So
Mm,
if I say yes to this after school meeting, then I'm saying no to leaving on time and maybe spending that with my husband. Or if I say yes to emails at all hours, I'm saying no to being present at home. Or you could fill in those blanks with all kinds of things. If you get in the habit, and again, this is a lot easier said than done, and it takes a while until it becomes a habit, but just try and remember that every single time you say yes to something at school, and this is true of anything in your life, then that means that you no longer have the time for something else. So you're saying no to something else. And if what you're saying yes to is really meaningful to you and it's something you're passionate about, then of course you say yes, then maybe you have to cut back somewhere else to make time for that. I feel like a lot of the things that we say yes to in our schools or in our jobs are not things that we're always the most passionate about. And they're not things that we should be saying yes to and no to other things that maybe we're more passionate about. That was the one thing that I tried to always keep in mind is if you say yes, you're saying no to something else.
that feeling of saying thank you, but I'm going to pass on this committee or
Yeah.
whatever, that can feel really like icky and bad. Do you think that
Yes.
gets easier over time?
I do. I do. And I feel like the way that you say it also matters. And I feel like there are some people who might feel like they're being too abrupt or feel like they have to give reasons. And I say excuses, it's not really an excuse, but
No.
the follow up for why.
Justification.
Thank you for
Mm.
that. And really, you don't. And this is something my friends have actually worked on with me, which I am not there yet, but I'm getting there. No is a complete sentence. Not that we have to just say no to people. I'm not saying if somebody asks you to do something, I'm not saying your no should be no or your answer should just be the one word no. But I am just giving you permission that it doesn't have to be this long, icky, drawn out thing where you're feeling guilty over it or you have to explain all your reasons behind it. And I think honestly, we can be a real example for other people. I think that there's a lot of teachers that need to learn this lesson and that you can say no to certain things. And the more that we do it, then perhaps it'll help somebody else do it as well for something
Mm.
that maybe they would rather say no to as well.
Yeah. You're allowed to rather do something else and
Right.
be on that extra committee at school or do that extra thing.
That's true. It is your life after all, and you have the final
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
in how you spend your time. Yeah, it is up to you.
There seems to be every staff I've ever worked on, there seems to be those people that always do all the things. And then there's
Yes,
those other people that sit back and relax and just wait. And I
right.
think sometimes there's greatness in that. They're
Yes.
doing themselves, like they're putting themselves first. And that kind of goes us all the way back to the beginning of this conversation.
And it's hard. I used to be almost resentful or jealous of those kind of teachers. It's, I'm doing all this. Why aren't they
Mm,
doing the same? But the
yeah.
truth is, no matter what their intention was behind not doing all those extra things, they really were taking care of themselves and they
Mhm.
really were making sure that they had boundaries. And that's something that we all need to do. And it's hard. It's just like anything else. When you make a new habit or when you're trying to make change in your life, change is difficult. But the more you do it, the more you remember in your mind. If you're saying yes, then you're also saying no to something else. It does get easier.
Yeah. So, for any teachers out there that are listening right now, we have thousands and thousands of teachers that listen to this podcast every week. And we're grateful for every single one of you, by the way.
Yes.
If they're out there, if they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling exhausted, what's one thing they could do today to start reclaiming their time and energy?
Honestly, I think it's creating that daily and weekly schedule because that impacts everything else. I say if you can manage your time, then you can manage your tasks, you can manage your piles, all the things. Sitting down, writing out all the things that you feel like you have to get done in every day or week, and then going through, is this important? Does this matter? If the answer is no, just scratch those off. And then putting all the other tasks that really are important into an actual routine, schedule it on your calendar, consider it like an appointment for yourself. So you have a lesson planning appointment and stick to it. But just creating a detailed schedule for yourself. And then you'll be able to walk away at 4 o'clock or walk away at 5, whatever the time is, so
Hmm.
exactly what time you can leave, what time to be there, what time to set aside for yourself. But yeah, having that schedule is, I think, foundational to anything else.
Yeah. And I'm going to add to that, grab your to-do list and get your highlighter and just highlight those things that are
Yes.
absolutely necessary and leave everything that's a preference that Jennifer spoke about at the beginning as unhighlighted. And then that's going to give you the direction of where you need to go next instead of feeling like you're always on that hamster wheel of the to-do list and it's never ending and it's a mile long and you've just got to keep going and
Yes.
going.
So true. That's so true. And I feel like it's eye opening. You don't really realize all the things you do in a day until you write it all down. But then you also don't really realize all the things that are important or are not important until you do highlight it or you do cross them off. It's so impactful just to do that. If you haven't done that, I really highly recommend that you do.
I think I'm going to do that for my to-do list today. I think I'm going to jump off this call and do that exact thing.
Well, good. I hope it works for you.
Jennifer, you have given us so many really great actionable tips and ideas on how we can reclaim our time as teachers and really support ourselves as teachers, because without supporting ourselves, we can't really support the students in the best possible way. How can
That's
people
true.
find you and connect with you more?
So my website is everythingjustso.org. I'm on Instagram at everythingjustso. Also on Facebook. I'm not very active there, but Instagram much more than Facebook.
Yes, and she's been sharing some really great tips on Instagram recently. So go and check them out. We'll make sure that all of that is linked with the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for asking me. I always love talking with you, so I appreciate it. It's quite an honor. Thank you.
I loved that chat with Jennifer. I think she gave us so many wonderful tips and tricks and just real life experiences as a teacher to know that we all are in the same boat and we can all feel the same way. When she was talking, I thought, oh, I've done that. I've been there. I know that feeling. And I'm sure that you resonated with that as well. Jennifer is all about organization. She's all about putting systems in place and helping teachers save time. That's something that we're really passionate about here at Rainbow Sky too. Our motto is work smarter and not harder. And that's actually how we connected with Jennifer in the first place. We connected over this idea of organization and helping teachers. She used to run this wonderful conference and invited us to come and talk at the conference. And that is where the friendship developed from there. So thank you so much, Jennifer, my friend and colleague, for coming on the podcast today. If you want to learn more about how you can save time as a teacher, we have a mini course called Transform Your Teacher Time. It may seem a little bit counterintuitive to do a course when you need to save time, but it is a quick course. It teaches you lots of little mini tips and tricks that you can do just to sharpen up your systems, to change things up, to adjust things in order to make sure that you're saving hours in your week. We're not just talking about minutes, we're talking about minutes that add up to hours. So I will put the link to Transform Your Teacher Time in the show notes as well. As always, Thank you so much for listening. We are terribly grateful for you. Until next week, there are rainbows ahead, and together, we're unstoppable.